Hello, I'm Anwiltus, and today I am answering some questions that have been asked because I requested that people ask questions, and I did receive some questions. Although on YouTube I only received one question, which I think is quite, uh, I could say, disappointing because although my channel has grown, I have received less questions than the last time I did this type of event. So anyway, the first question is, "Where's Bob?" I originally wondered which Bob are we talking about here, but I quickly understood that it was referring to Bob Doyle, with whom I had collaborated with the anti-optic stream, as well as he was a person who was making a number of video essays on a number of different philosophical and political topics. And as to what happened to him and why he isn't making any videos right now, well, the answer is that he was busy with academic pursuits, and anybody that is familiar with this type of busyness certainly, I would imagine, would understand this, that sometimes you are just busy, and although you might be interested in doing something else, you might not actually have the time to do so. And this is something that I became keenly aware of as a while back for the Getting the Answers podcast. Uh, I had requested that he could perhaps uh, help us with an episode we did on Nietzsche and Nietzsche's philosophy, although ultimately he was unavailable due to his busyness with academic pursuits. And he recommended someone else, in which case that other person was also busy. So it ended up, we ended up not having a special guest for that episode. But anyway, uh, moving along, the next question is, what is happening with Getting the Answers? And the answer to that is quite simple. Mr. Birkenhoff has had a number of events happen, and because of this, uh, the show had been delayed a few different times. And this has happened in the past for different reasons than the present reasons. But the show is not canceled. And as a special offer to you all, something special for you uh, viewers here, I'm going to tell you what the topic is going to be so that you might ask particular questions or make particular suggestions, or perhaps even you could request to be a special guest for this topic. And the topic is democracy, its advantages and disadvantages, the advantages and disadvantages of democracy. So if you know a lot about democracy or are willing to discuss democracy, feel free to write in the comment section below for any suggestions, or even if you would like to join us, and perhaps that can be arranged. So, anyway, uh, moving on from that, the third point, someone had asked me to do an episode on an event that this person presumed was happening in Azerbaijan. And the problem with this is that I could not independently verify that this was actually happening in Azerbaijan, as the original information was in fact from 4chan, which is where this person got this information from. And of course, articles and such things linked on 4chan. But I was not able to independently verify this, so I could not really entertain this idea because the proposition was that Azerbaijan was being taken over by a Christian or Christian like group that also wanted to reunite the all the tribes of the steppes. And honestly, it sounds very unlikely. And from what I've read, Azerbaijan does, despite being a Shia Islamic majority country, does have a president who is very pro secularism. I think there's even a statue of a of a woman taking off her veil, which is a bit um, strange for an Islamic country. But moving further on, that's not to say that there aren't people in Islamic countries that don't wear veils, because there certainly are. But the meaning of this, the message that is being sent here, is, I think, very strange, especially when you consider that this is right next to Iran, which is a very conservative country. But on the idea of the area being part of a new khanate, a new horde, a new union of steppe tribes, I found that highly unlikely. Um, and I'm sure that it's just somebody on 4chan LARPing, to be honest. I think that's most likely what's happening, as such things do happen on that website. But anyway, in regards to perhaps a greater union in Central Asia, um, I think it is possible, especially if water wars happen and a region consolidates because of that. Although even if they have petroleum, I don't think that it will lead to them becoming a great power, because especially not since the Industrial Revolution, because they would really need industrial development in the region. And the problem is that imports and exports from Central Asia are not as easy as some other regions, especially when you consider the bigger neighbors such as Russia, China, India, and the Middle Eastern countries, which also have petroleum but have a greater access to the oceans than Central Asia, which means that establishing a prominent industrial base in Central Asia is unlikely. Now, that being said, could they perhaps gain an advantage through software and media? Maybe. But if we're simply talking about imports and exports, Central Asia is not the greatest place for foreign investment, and therefore, as we see in other countries, uh, I don't think it would rise as well. For example, in the United States, you have a situation where the most industrialized regions were areas that were close to navigable rivers, lakes, and the coast. Uh, and a lot of the more inland regions are not as industrialized. And you could say the same about China uh, and other places like Brazil and Russia, and just generally any large regions have this issue. So, in that sense, Central Asia, while there are ways to access it from the ocean, there's a canal that connects to the Volga, and you go into the Caspian Sea. I don't think that, especially with water becoming more scarce in the region, I don't think that that's as easy a path as any of those other regions adjacent to Central Asia have, which means that Central Asia, I don't see it as as becoming the next big superpower. Now, that being said, uh, that is my 2 cents on Azerbaijan and Central Asia and the unification of the steppes, as people say, in the sense that I I don't think Azerbaijan is involved in any of these major events. I don't think Central Asia is going to become a superpower, even if it does unite. And all the surrounding regions have better advantages. But moving on from that, the fourth point, someone asked me to comment on the historical situation between the Populares and the Optimates in Roman history. Two factions, the Populares, are generally described as populists, or as people that generated a popular appeal by making reforms that favored the middle and lower classes in Roman societies, as opposed to the optimates, who were individuals who were much more traditionalist, perhaps a bit more anti-Greek than the broader population, and who had an idea of the importance of strong traditional virtues, and were very anti-demagogic in a sense, which isn't to say that they both didn't make popular appeals, because they did, because it was a republic where people had to vote and be elected. But this these two broad factions, and I do say they are broad factions rather than specific parties, because they weren't formally organized, and people could switch their alignment between these groups and other groups relatively easily. But they ended up becoming two major factions in the late Roman Republic, wherein uh, uh, you had alternating periods of power between these groups. For example, Gaius Marius and the Gracchi brothers were very much in favor of the Populares, but then Sulla came along, and he was a hero of the Optimates. And then you have Cato, who was the arch conservative uh, of the Roman Senate in that time period. And then you have the some younger individuals, Julius Caesar, who was typically in favor of the land reforms that were favored by the Populares, and the factions eventually entered into a realignment where the two major factions in Rome were the pro-Caesarian and anti-Caesarian factions, as the Roman Civil War emerged, and as the second triumvirate was emergent in that time period until the rise of Augustus. But anyway, the point is that uh, this is a situation that there are some ancient authors who write about this. For example, Cicero famously wrote about this, but I don't think that there's a lot of in-depth analyses on YouTube about this, especially in light of looking at the original sources. Um, Although, if I were to make a video about this, I would certainly have to do a lot more research into this. So tell me if you think that this is worth more research in order to perhaps give an in-depth analysis of the Populares and Optimates and their conflict, the policies they supported, respectively, and who aligned with them at what point. I could possibly perhaps throw something like that together if it is desired. But anyway, that's it for now. As I said before, there weren't a lot of questions, so those were the main issues to address. But don't worry, if you have something else that you want me to discuss, feel free to suggest a video in the comments section below, and I will perhaps make a video addressing that particular topic. Or if you want to have a discussion with me, feel free to contact me as well, as that would be a great opportunity to ask a number of questions and follow up questions to those questions. So, in that sense, that would be useful as well. So, anyway, thank you all for watching. I've been Anawiltus, and I will be seeing you all next time. Over and out.